All right, once you have your photo reference kind of picked out, this will be my dominant reference. Don't forget that it's not just based on one photo or one feeling. So I have all of these that I want to keep kind of open in this corner. And I will open these up in Photoshop as I need them. But this is the composition I'm going to use. I painted out, just to prepare the photo, a little bit of that hand. I actually like the edges here being a little abrupt and strange. And then of course he's got a different kind of quality to his hair, but I like that kind of slicked down quality. So there's lots we can do. But this is just my reference. So I'm going to save this now. And I'll just save it as a PSD so I can play with it more if I want to the desktop. But this is not something I'm simply going to paint on top of. Instead, I'm going to open up a new file, and I will call this Carl Assignment 9 James Joyce Portrait. It's a digital painting. I want it to be 13 inches wide, 19 inches tall by 350 pixels per inch, because that's the largest paper we can print on at a good print resolution. Basically, you want to open up a file at the largest resolution that you can for what you can actually produce. Because we're not using vectors here, using raster pixel-based images. And so anything we paint, we're already setting our resolution as we make it. So if you set a resolution too small, you'll be really unhappy later. All right, now, how do I set it up so I can see my reference while I'm painting? It's just like having a canvas. You want to make the canvas able to be zoomed in on, able to get away from, but you also want to see your photo reference. And usually you want to see your photo reference off to the right if you're right-handed. So what I'm going to do is swap it like this, so that my canvas is here, my reference is here. And then I go to Window, Arrange, and I say 2 up vertical. And it will give me 2 windows within the Photoshop window. So as I stretch that Photoshop window out, I'll get more space for both of them. If I need more space, I can kind of minimize my tools sometimes. And I can customize the working space. And while I'm at it, Photoshop comes with some preset workspaces, and I might try the painting space, which will give me brush tips right here, give me layers, and give me swatches, which are the main things I'm going to be worried about. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that paint mode. Okay, now I want my canvas to be bigger than my reference, so I can click on my reference layer. I can minimize the space it needs. I can also shrink it down if I want even more space. Because generally, the bigger you can use the painting, the better. Whoops. So now I go to this layer, make this bigger, but still have it all fit on the screen. And now I'm ready to get started. So my background should always be blank white, like the white of the canvas. And I'm going to lock that, just like in digital coloring. Now my next layer, I'm going to sketch. Just like I would with charcoal on a canvas. And you can decide how you want to set up your sketch. I'm just going to use a very simple brush. Well, let's get experimental from the beginning. Let's get away from our standard brushes, which go small to thick with pressure. We're going to learn how to customize all of those. Let me find a brush that's more like a pencil. And instead of using blue or some other color, I'll just use black, but it will be at a lower opacity. And And then I can just start sketching in. Now, what if I want to modify that? Like, I like it, but I want to modify it. So now we get to the brush settings. And the most important brush settings for me are always shape dynamics. So if I turn on shape dynamics, and if I set certain controls, I can affect how the brush will be used. And I can pretty much change it in every way. Now, what's really strange about these shape dynamics is how it gets thinner towards the middle. It's kind of an inverse property. So what I'm going to do is show you how you can modify your own brush. All right, so first, with shape dynamics, you get to control with a tablet through pin pressure. And then depending on the type of tablet you have, you might be able to control through tilt as well, and even twirl. But certain brushes have certain limitations. So here it goes lighter to harder. So this one's based more on opacity. So I can't change the thickness or thinness, but I can change the opacity. Now with my pin pressure, I can also change the angle. And I actually might do it with tilt. So now as I use that, you're going to see how it kind of builds up. Maybe that's a nice tool to use. So there's a lot of these pre-built brushes. Some are meant to look like painted brushes with certain brush dynamics already built in. But what I tend to do is find one I'm comfortable with and use it almost exclusively. So if you're comfortable drawing with pencil, this might be a good one. Kind of builds up lots of technical lines, but if you want something that's softer and looser, you want to find something else. Okay, then we get to just standard brushes. Which you can paint thicker or thinner with pressure. But the shape of the brush itself really matters. So instead of it just being a dot, this brush is this really huge shape. I'm trying to exaggerate it for you. That has kind of a texture to it. And so this is more like using charcoal for me. But then I might want to play with its shape dynamics. So I want to angle it as I work. See that? And I'm going to shift that by my pin tilt. And I might want to have more texture built into it. So it's more broken up like a pencil. And this is just modifying existing brushes to your purpose. So yeah, I'm liking that one. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to use this brush just to do my sketch on this sketch layer. I'm going to set it at a fairly high opacity. Well, yeah, maybe about 90. And then instead of it being solid black, I'm going to pick kind of a dark gray. And I'm not going to use it too huge so that I can really feel just kind of loose with how I sketch. All right, so just like with doing basic shapes, you want to find the simple forms I'm going to divide up his head this way, find his eye line, find where his nose breaks, where his mouth is, where his ears go, which usually fits between the eye line and the nose line, his hairline. All of this will give you likeness, the specific shape of his jaw, a slight softness to his jaw, which is nice. And I think it's important to sketch it out like this instead of just drawing from the reference, like tracing the shapes right off of the reference, just so there's a little bit of my energy in the representation. And I'm going to make some aesthetic decisions, like separating the space between his earlobe and the collar, so I'm not a slave to the photo. And this could be a portrait of the writer as a young man, to quote the title of one of his books. So right now it doesn't have any age in it, it just has different proportion. But I can see in the sketch the wrinkles in his forehead are going to be very important. The size and the insetness of his eyes is going to be very important. So I might switch to a slightly smaller brush, slightly darker. Frame some of this in. You always want to get everything proportioned first before you put on things like glasses and facial hair, because those need to feel like they're on top of the structure. It's important to know that nostrils line up with the inside of the eye, and the eyes are usually 5 across the face and 1 eye width apart from each other, though glasses can make that look small. You want to note where the head goes, bows out, and then where it comes back in. As human beings, we're very, very sensitive to all of these little changes. But this is just a sketch, and all these lines will get replaced and painted over. This is like charcoal on the canvas. Now I could also use a much lower opacity and be much brasher and kind of paint with shapes. So I'll do that in another layer. So there's lots of ways you can approach this. So I've switched to a lower opacity for some of these finer details and the textures of his hair, which are a lot softer. If I want to make a hard edge, I just really state it over and over again. The shape of ears is incredibly important to likeness. Everyone has very unique ears. All of these things matter. You can also customize your eraser if you like. Along similar lines, find a brush that you're comfortable with, an opacity that you like. All right. I can start getting rid of these lines I don't need so much. I like the rumpled kind of undone tie look. So I'm going to use a little bit of invention here. Put the vest here, unbuttoned shirt, kind of crumpled up with the tie connecting.